Excellent. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Cities and Nature stage. Thanks for coming along to listen today, and thanks to Reset Connect for inviting us all along as speakers. We've got a good session for you now. The theme being unlocking urban regeneration through investment in sustainable transport and infrastructure. And we have an excellent panel that will hopefully give some different perspectives on the topic, from both transport operators to development agencies, and we'll introduce them all right now. So I'm Martin Wayman. I'm Group Director of Corporate Responsibility at First Group. So for those who don't know us, we are a passenger transport organisation in the UK. We run major bus networks and 3 rail networks, GWR, Avanti and Lumo, as well as Hull Trains in the east of England. And I suppose this topic resonates for us as an organisation because we see transport that has a huge role to play in economic development and growth in cities. So the topic itself, what does urban regeneration mean? Well, I suppose there's 3 aspects to it. There's the sort of environmental benefits. There's, for example, clean air and decarbonisation. You have social benefits, job creation, access to opportunity, training, and things like that. And then economic benefits, job creation and economic growth in an area. And what we're going to cover today is our different takes on how transport supports that, the role it plays, and I suppose the 2 things mutually reinforcing each other. So without further ado, I'll allow the rest of the panel to introduce themselves, and then we'll get stuck into the topic. So, Graham. I think so.
Hello everybody, can you all hear me? Brilliant. So my name is Graham Mollison. I work for South Eastern Trains, so anyone who lives in Kent or South East London will probably travel on our trains. We're all an electric train company, so it means we're rapidly decarbonising. And the really important thing for us is that we connect about all the communities from 171 stations across Kent and East Sussex and South East London into jobs, education, social events, and all those things that are really important for society. So for us, regeneration is about the assets, but also about the people that we connect and we help to lead their lives every day. So we carry about 125 million passengers a year. So there's 125 million connections that those people can make every day and every year as a part of the services that we provide. So we're really passionate about connecting people to opportunities and opportunities for change and social change. So thank you for having me here this morning.
Thanks very much. Laura?
Morning, everyone. Good to be here. I'm Laura Citron. I'm Chief Executive of London and Partners, the growth agency for London, and London's mission lead for growth. So London and Partners, as the growth agency, we run inward investment for London, bringing in high growth companies and capital to the city, trade and innovation. We support small businesses across the city to grow, and we're the destination agency, so that means that we're responsible for bringing in visitors and events to the city. My role as mission lead is to work across all levels of government and public and private sectors towards delivering our 10-year growth plan for the city, which we published in February this year, and I'm sure we'll talk more about today.
Thanks very much. Peter?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Peter Runacres, Head of Urban Futures at Earls Court. I'm the oddball here because I'm the beneficiary of all of the urban transport and the interlinks that we have. So we have a central London site, 44 acres. It'll be 4,000 new homes, and we'll deliver 12,000 jobs, as well as a whole host of other mixed uses around the site. And the urban transport and the links to the hinterland and elsewhere is of critical importance to us because it's where we get the talent pool from, but it's also the enabler of connectivity. And for those communities in and around us, it's absolutely vital that we sort out even the last mile from the major infrastructure right the way down to the last few steps of every single journey.
Do we just talk straight in? Can you hear me now? Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Hello, everybody. Morning, I'm Andrea Davidson. I'm Head of Carbon and Climate Change at HS2. And it's great to sort of sit with the rest of the panel where we're looking at sustainable transport. And I think Martin hit the nail on the head of, what do we mean by sustainable transport? And from an HS2 perspective, it's, well, how do we build with that purpose in mind? We know that transport brings growth. And how do we make sure...
As Bruce May will be unlocking the power of global entertainment on the business and supply chain world, while Louis Stevens and Caroline Bates will be discussing on purpose to proof on the food systems. Thank you.
I'm really glad that wasn't just me. Nothing like a bit of an interlude. So when I start to think about how do we build with purpose, it's really those, 3 pillars of sustainable transport. What are we looking at? We need to build with that environmental necessity in mind. How do we build making sure that HS2 will be zero carbon journeys? And it's building on the great work that has been done with major infrastructure projects before. We need to create cleaner cities. We need to reduce emissions. We need to create greener spaces. Then we look from a social aspect. How do we create that inclusivity? How do we make sure that it benefits those that these transport links are linked to? And I'm quite excited about talking about that last mile. How do we get people to the stations? How do we get them to the connectivity? And how do we create that growth beyond it? And then around that economics, we've seen a massive uplift. We've done a study around what happened post-Royal Ascent of HS2. And we're already seeing huge amounts of investments, and we can bring some of the case studies to life, but a huge amount of investments around our West London stations and our West Midlands stations as well. So it's really quite exciting to see as how does transport bring all these 3 elements together.
Richard?
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you very much for having us here today. My name's Richard Beeson. I'm from Humber Freeport. I'm the head of investment there at Humber Freeport. The Humber is the most polluting industrial cluster in the UK, which sounds like a negative thing, but actually it's quite a positive thing. And it's the place that has the most opportunity to decarbonise. And it's the Freeport's job to use government incentives to attract investment, to bring in new business, bring in new investors from overseas, and in particular to use decarbonisation, to use innovation and to use technology to become a powerhouse of the 21st century. So what's that to do with transport in urban areas? I can hear you asking yourselves. The key to it is I think, in my view, is the whole thing is holistic. So you can't put in you can't have electric HS2, you can't have trams, you can't have electric buses without the power. And it's the Humber is where the green energy comes from. So the wind turbines at sea are currently the most efficient way of generating green electricity. But at the same time, there's lots of experiments and lots of work going on in the Humber on hydrogen and on methanol and all kinds of new energy forms, green energy forms that currently aren't cost effective, but with the right incentives and the right work will become effective. And I guess just one little thing I'd like to jump in as well. In terms of urban regeneration, if areas like the Humber attract investment into that area, that in turn regenerates that area. So Hull, for example, that the investment into manufacturing, into energy, into Hull regenerates Hull, makes life for people who live there better, as well as for places in the south that have the benefit of the transport.
Great. So thanks everyone for your take on the topic. So you can see we've got some different perspectives of different types of organisation to cover it. So, I might just start with rail, perhaps as a bias, given that I work for First Group and we've got some other rail organisations here. But to give an example from my company, we launched a service called Lumo about 4 years ago. So if for those who aren't aware, we created a new relatively high speed, not quite HS1 or HS2 speed, but a fast link between London and Edinburgh for the first time. And it's been a huge success. We've carried 4 million passengers in that time, and last year, for the first time, rail journeys supplanted air travel as the most popular sort of form of transport between the two cities. And that obviously is great for us, but I think to Richard's point, how is that driving opportunity and growth in between the two cities as a result? What's it doing in terms of job creation? What's it doing in terms of business growth, etc.? So I suppose in a similar way, Graham, we've had HS1 now for the best part of 10, 15 years. And obviously that runs from sort of Folkestone right up through to St Pancras, but goes via what were some, I suppose, less developed parts of North Kent that have now changed the result. So could you comment on that and the kind of impact that HS1's had?
Yeah, so our high-speed services, the only high-speed services at the moment in the UK until High Speed 2 comes along, have been running, like Martin said, for 15 years now. So we've seen transformational change that those services have enabled to the communities of Kent. So Kent County Council did a survey back in 2019 and found that there's an extra 164,000 households who are now able to connect to work that previously hadn't been able to connect to work in London. So our services run high speed from St Pancras, another area of major regeneration, out into Kent. They run high speed services to Ashford, so we can get to Ashford in less than 40 minutes. And then they do a rounder service. It goes around the coast from Folkestone around through the North Kent seaside towns back into the high speed network at Ebbsfleet. So those whole services are really connected, massively connected communities in quite deprived areas of North Kent into job opportunities in London and also job opportunities across Kent. And I think what we've noticed is, post-pandemic, the commuting numbers have fallen. They're starting to rise again. But what we're noticing is that there's a lot more weekend leisure travel as well. So we're also helping people and businesses in Kent benefit from our rail service because it takes people out of London at the weekend. So last weekend I travelled down, hottest day of the year, on lovely air-conditioned trains from St Pancras down to Folkestone, down to the seaside. 1 hour I was out from London to the seaside, and the train was full and standing, a 12-car train. So it's amazing how we can also help the community in Kent to regenerate and take advantage of the economic opportunities of tourism as well. So there's lots of opportunities that we've been able to create, and I think the social change is sort of about one person at a time. That social change that we can kind of help the communities to connect to jobs, education, social, healthcare and social activities. But we can also help our workforce, the new 5,000 people, to have apprenticeships, to have worthwhile careers they might not have been able to do. So, giving people engineering apprenticeships and being able to take them through and find rewarding careers, and also within our supply chains as well. We have a huge supply chain, so it's about creating that social change in our supply chain as well. So our opportunities to create change are multifunctional. They're economic, they're social, and clearly environmental as well, because we're enabling the communities throughout Kent to hopefully decarbonise by getting out of cars onto our trains, which are all electric, and rapidly decarbonising. So we create lots of change in lots of areas.
Great, thanks. And Andrea, just staying with that, features 2 not up and running yet, but even the sheer work being undertaken to develop and construct it in itself is driving kind of all of those things that Graham's talking about, right, in terms of job creation, etc. So what's that look like at the moment?
Very quickly, Martin, I don't know if everyone heard you, but I could hear you, so I'm going to respond to it and we can all guess what his question was. But I mean, it's great to hear sort of the regeneration of HS1. And when we're looking at HS2, it's going, well, is it just a train? It's just a spine between the two biggest cities? No, I mean, we've already got 30,000 people working on the program. So it's a huge investment into skills development, as you sort of said, around HS1 as well. But then it's a case of, well, what's beyond that? And one of my colleagues often uses the phrase that HS2 is just an ingredient in a much bigger recipe in terms of how we get there. So I mentioned we've got 2 reports online that detail out, what did we see post-Royal Ascent? And we saw 65% increase in planning applications in West Midlands. That's huge. 500% increase in residential planning applications in buildings, commercial spaces. And it's not just, numbers on a page, but we're starting to see that investment already. The BBC they're transforming the tea factory up in Birmingham to be their new headquarters, which will be a number of programs that are live streamed that we see every day. The Digbeth location studios, where I believe the Peaky Blinders movie is already starting to be filmed. And that was a brownfield site of 80,000 square meters, both of which, massive opportunities for jobs, skill creation. But not entirely just because of HS2, but because that link's created. And it comes back to, where are those opportunities? Where are those skill pools, which we spoke about earlier? And, what are those plans for investment? And that's where I firmly believe, major infrastructure projects are allowing these sort of the big links, one, through construction, building skills, building the workforce, but then creating more opportunities for maybe areas that may have been overlooked to go, right, how do we get people into these links? And we'll talk about the last mile in a bit, but how do we get people into these links? How do we get people into these opportunities? And it's creating diverse opportunities rather than just, a travel from A to B, which is really exciting.
Great, thanks. So obviously HS2 and HS1 connect with London, and as part of London and Partners, it's been really interesting in the run-up to this hearing just about the growth plan for London and how transport plays a role in it. It's primarily about economic growth, but it's interesting, Laura, to hear your perspective on it and how London can potentially improve in that area through transport.
Thank you. So London set its 10-year growth plan in late February of this year. And it's the first time that the city has come together across all different industries, across universities and colleges and the NHS and local government and regional government and all the key players to say, this is how we want our city to grow in future. And you're right, it is about economic growth, but the growth plan sets out 4 ambitions. One is productivity growth, but the other 3 are inclusion, so poverty reduction, accelerating our progress towards net zero, and being a global capital, so which is about exports and how we look out to the world, but also into the rest of the UK. So what role does transport play in that story? A very big and important one. And I would pick out 4 things in particular where transport is really critical to London achieving its growth plan. The first is housing. London, as I'm sure won't be news to you, has a housing crisis. That's a problem because it's blighting people's lives. It's using up far too much of people's disposable income and pushing families into poverty. It also affects the size of our workforce, and temporary accommodation is a huge burden on local government. Transport, new transport infrastructure can open up major new housing developments in London, and we have 3 priority ones. The first is the extension of the Docklands Light Railway to Thamesmead. That would enable us to build a whole new town of 30,000 homes. The second is the extension southwards of the Bakerloo line. That would unlock another 20,000 homes. And then the third is the radial West London orbital, which would be about another 7,000. So the first thing is housing. The second is about the shape of economic growth in London. And one of the big drives in the growth plan is to London being what we call a polycentric city. Now that's a bit of a horrible word, but what it basically means is that there's clusters of growth all over the city. And London isn't anymore a city where all the action happens in the city centre and then we have just residential suburbs. But a lot of London's transport was built that way. It was built to suck in commuters in the morning and then spread everybody back out in the evening. But actually, that's not the pattern of the London economy anymore. And we have major centres, whether it's in Sutton or in Stratford or in Earl's Court or in Brent Cross. So transport infrastructure needs to enable London to be that polycentric city, which means that people have opportunities closer to home and we spread prosperity across the city. And an example of that, a very small, simple example, was adding a new station to the Thameslink at Brent Cross has enabled a whole new town to be developed with housing, but with major commercial and economic activity as well that wouldn't have been possible without that new station. So transport's key for a polycentric city. Thirdly, it's about our talent pool. So there's a lot of evidence that suggests that one of the most important drivers for global cities is how big your talent pool is. How many people can you get working in your city? That's our major competitive advantage. And transport within the city is obviously critical for that, because we want as many Londoners as possible to be able to participate in the economy, which means they need to be able to get to jobs. But it's also where transport outside the city and things like HS2 and the lines that you run are so vital, because a very significant proportion of London's workforce doesn't technically live within the boundary of Greater London. They're travelling in and they're travelling out. That's what makes London the incredible, competitive global city that it is. And the fourth is net zero. So there's all the obvious reasons why getting people out of cars and onto public transport is a very good thing for our net zero journey, and it's critical. And we now have the largest electric bus fleet in Western Europe, for example. So it's about modal shift, but also about decarbonising our transport. But actually, one of the big things that I don't think gets talked about enough is international rail for London. So we're a global city, but we're on an island. And we're home to one of the busiest airports in the world. 5 airports, one of which, Heathrow, is one of the busiest in the world. And we can't achieve our net zero goals without, well, both a significant decarbonisation of aviation, but also shifting a bunch of our short-haul air onto rail. And so getting more routes running through the tunnel into the key European destinations is going to be vital. So it's really positive to see that we've now got competition coming onto that route, and new routes hopefully coming on stream to Switzerland, to places like Zurich and to Barcelona and to Berlin on direct routes, because that will really be transformational for London. We've seen what the Brussels and Paris lines have done for us. I think extending that international rail is really critical. So those are the 4 ways that we see transport being a really important enabler of the growth plan: housing, polycentric growth, the size of our talent pool, and net zero.
Excellent, thank you. Richard, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in quickly just on one point. Laura made your first point about the 3 new transport routes that unlock the housing and how these things all link together. So the new underground trains are currently being built in the Humber by Siemens, and Siemens would love to build all the trains for those, at least one of those 3 new transport routes, which in turn brings investment into the Humber, brings jobs, and it brings better lives for the people in the Humber, whilst at the same time making life better for people in London. So I think it's this point about it all being part of one big ecosystem. It's not a question of that London gets richer and the North gets poorer, that we all need to, I nearly said level up then, but you know what I mean.
Come in, Peter, sure.
Just to add on to that, which I was going to make a point about, it's also about knowledge sharing and opportunity. The point that Laura was making about the Brent Cross Town Station, without that happening, Sheffield Hallam University wouldn't have put a foothold in London. A lot of the access to knowledge, the talent of the future, that whole knowledge sharing across innovation districts, across universities, is absolutely fundamental. And more of the higher educations around the UK are looking to share with the South East as much as possible to get foothold, because it creates opportunities both in the South East but also where they're actually coming from. And it was Sheffield Hallam saw it as a fantastic opportunity of being able to get a foothold in London for their students, but also for people who then end up being based here to actually go back up to Sheffield Hallam and to learn about the opportunities out there. Now, that wouldn't happen without that kind of infrastructure. I want to learn about the energy technologies that you're using in the Humberside to actually decarbonise, because even from a central regeneration scheme, I would love to be able to get off the grid. I don't want to use UKPN. So I need to, these kinds of infrastructure pieces just help with that knowledge sharing, and that shifts jobs, knowledge, location, all that kind of stuff. And to Laura's international point, if you look at what Europe's now doing, Imperial just recently launched their innovation network, so tying in innovation districts around the UK. Italy and other countries within Europe have been doing that. The Milan Innovation District, they have a whole network of innovation districts, because you can't solve the climate crisis on your own. You might solve a part of it. You need other people and other organisations, other innovation areas to try and do that. We can't solve all of our problems in isolation. So it's not just a polycentric world from a transportation method. It's a polycentric world from a knowledge sharing, I would posit.
Right. Yeah. And Peter, just staying with you, Peter, could you, we've heard about the broader plan for London, but could you comment perhaps on the scale of what's going on in Earls Court, and perhaps the role that transport is playing right through as a red thread throughout it all, and how it's kind of improving the area and how it will be part of the plan going forward.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I don't want to make this too London-based, but I think the regeneration principles hold true no matter wherever you are. Actually, Earls Court is. If you ever went to the great exhibitions halls there that were taken down, if you went to see Bowie or to the Ideal Home exhibition or to the London Boat Show, those halls were taken down about 14 years ago, and the whole area has atrophied as a result, but it's fantastically connected. It's got three tube stations. It's got the West London line running right the way through it, but it benefits from a whole host of other connectivity areas. We're looking to Laura's point, to create all of those three things that are part of the London mission. So we're looking at putting in 4,000 new homes. We'll drive 12,000 jobs in the site through nearly 3 million square foot of workspace, new cultural centres, but also we're trying to make it a sustainability exemplar of how you actually do regeneration and development. We can't do that without either the large-scale intercity connectivity that we've got, within the small-scale city connectivity, but also then within the last mile. How do you actually get people through and around your communities, but doing it in a sustainable way? People more and more are choosing the way that they travel because of their carbon footprint. They're becoming more and more aware of it. But also, as we are becoming more connected, communities are becoming aware that there are those that are deprived areas. They are in effect transport deprived. They can't get around that last mile inclusivity. We shouldn't say last mile anymore. We metricized in 1972, I think. So, the last kilometre piece of transport. How do you actually do that? There are still communities within our cities, within our hinterlands that just don't get that connectivity. They don't get the access to services. They don't get the access to jobs. Some areas, we were talking about it earlier, Richard, weren't we, about how they're being hollowed out because they don't have those access to those services. We need the full transport mode. So at Earls Court, one of the things that the regeneration will do will allow for the upgrade of the tube and rail stations around us. We will be able to implement those last mile electric journeys through the use of electric scooters, electric vehicles, hopefully autonomous vehicles at one point, dare I say it. So that is how you actually start to get that connectivity. And you might not think that property developers think about these things, but we absolutely do. Because without the movement of people in and around it, without a 24-hour economy, we just become isolationist items, which just don't succeed.
Thanks. Yeah, might bring it back to the two kind of high-speed operators here. So what does the last mile consideration look like for HS1? And we spoke before about an integrated travel plan and it not just being about rail, but how do people get to the station, etc. So what does that look like for HS1, and how is that being kind of improved over time, or is it already in a good place, would you say?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've just published an integrated travel plan, and it's all about helping people to connect to our services, to connect to the things I've already spoken about, job opportunities, healthcare, social activities, all those things that are really important for people to thrive as a society, and people doing that as individuals. Every person is an individual and a million-piece jigsaw, and we need to help each person to make and fulfill their lives the best they can. And although we can provide really great, reliable services, we ran perfect services on the hottest day of the year, people still need to get to us. And however well our trains run, there can be a big barrier between getting from home to our station. So we need to make that easy, and we can't do that on our own. And transport is often, very much a system. We're reliant, it's an ecosystem. How do we all work together? Local communities, local authorities, bus operators, and everybody else to kind of help make that system function well. And there are lots of nodes on that journey. So, it might be easy for someone in a rural area who's got a car to drive from home to a station. But if you are someone without a car, how do you then get from home to our station if the bus services aren't great? So we kind of have these areas of transport social exclusion, and you'd be really surprised. Transport for the North did a study on this, and we've been looking at it. So our integrated travel plans focusing on creating change as much as we can in those 20 most excluded areas. And you'd be really surprised. They're in London, they're in North Kent, they're on the coastal communities, they're everywhere, because it's about connecting people from where they live to our services and other services as well. So it's a real challenge. And we're doing work there, but we need to work with others. So we've got 29 cycle hubs. Sometimes the cycle hubs, one at Rochester went in before the cycle improvements went in. So it's an enabling measure to improve accessibility in the wider area when it's regenerated, bus interchanges. So there's lots that we can do and enable as a transport community, as a society, to make that change. But we certainly can't do it on our own, but we really want to work with others to make that, to realise that ambition.
Great. And Andrea, like similarly with HS2, is this last mile consideration, there from the outset, as you build the stations, as you sort of consider that whole, I guess, just journey from a person's home to the station, how's that play into what HS2 is doing?
Well, I think it's really important to take one step back, and there's different major infrastructure projects across the country, and obviously this is the biggest one for a long time. And it's really important that we take some of those lessons learned and the work that HS1 has done, the work that Crossrail has done, to make sure that it is fit for purpose. What are the commuters wanting? What is going to get people out of their cars and onto the train? And making it easy and accessible is absolutely critical to do that. If it means, I think we were speaking about it earlier, if someone needs to change trains 4 times, they're not going to use it. They're going to find an easier way of doing it. So built into our plans is around accessibility to our stations, to be able to get from home, whether that's a bus, a cycle, a walking route. We've built those into our plans to ensure that people have options that they can take. And I mean, it's no big feat to say that you operated without delays on the hottest day of the year. I was definitely on a train that was not operating on the hottest day of the year. And building in that climate resilience and adaptation into everything we build now is absolutely critical. When we have the rains we had last year or the 34 degrees we had last week, it's really important that our transportation systems work to keep that talent pool where we are. And when we think about London, or HS2 from the different routes, we've got up in Curzon Street station, links to our interchange station. Our automated people mover will get you straight to Birmingham International Airport. Straight down to London, you'll have the link between West Coast Rail, you'll have Great Western Rail, the Elizabeth Line, straight to Heathrow. So it again is unlocking some of those opportunities. And we get to Euston, St Pancras, straight across the channel into Europe. So it's making sure that option for people to choose a cleaner piece of transportation, to choose that cleaner link is there. And I think that's what's critical. So working with partners, with local authorities to go, right, what do the communities need? What do the people need to make this fit for purpose, I think is absolutely key and critical. And that's what is built into each step of this way.
Great. And Laura, we talked before as well about people just not even kind of leaving their house in the first place. And
Come on, Martin, use it.
Well, I've could you remind me of the phrase? We all loved it.
HOGO.
HOGO, there you go.
Hassle of going out.
Hassle of going out. It's the new FOMO. So, yeah, and that being a problem in London because people are just perhaps staying at home watching Netflix, getting delivery rather than going out and spending money in shops. So, in a similar way, is that part of what's being done to address that in the growth plan of London? And again, does clearly for some people who might not have a bike or a car, they'll need to use public transport to go to where they want to go to. So, linked to what we were just saying, what thought is being given to that in London Partners?
Yeah, HOGO is this idea that in a post-COVID world, particularly with some generations, some demographics, people sort of think about making plans. Maybe I'm going to go into town and do something, but then when it comes to it, I can't really be bothered to get changed, can't really be bothered with the transport, might just stay at home and play a video game or watch TV, get a takeaway. And we think there's this competition between the HOGO, the hassle of going out, and the FOMO, the fear of missing out. And as a city, we need to make sure that the FOMO is beating the HOGO. The experience economy, which in London we describe as essentially people who are moving around, whether internationally or domestically, in order to have fun with each other, so to connect and have experiences. So that's retail and leisure and hospitality and culture and events and live sports. We have made that one of the priority growth sectors for the city. It's not one of the ones in the National Industrial Strategy, but for London we think that the experience economy is absolutely critical. Why? Because the experience economy is what underpins London's prosperity. The reason that London is the global city it is because it's a fantastic experience. People love being here because you have a great time, you've got open spaces, you've got things to do, you've got food and drink, you feel welcome, you feel you can belong, you feel you can travel smoothly around the city, and the navigation and the wayfinding is accessible and it feels inclusive. That's why the best minds from around the world want to be in London. And that's what then brings the investment and that positive flywheel. So we've made the experience economy one of our 5 priority growth sectors. And our North Star is to improve the visitor experience. So how can we make London the best place in the world to live and to visit and to experience? So some of our work is around bringing in the experiences of the future. So understanding what the consumer of the future really wants to spend their time doing, and it's changing over time, and bringing in those brilliant experiences and putting them in London. So people want things that are immersive. We've done a lot of work on immersive experiences or esports, different kinds of food and drink options. Well-being is really important. So how do we make sure that London's a place where even if you're on holidays, you feel that you can stay fit and go for walks and green spaces and so on. And transport's a really important part of that. So when we look at research about what actually drives people's experience of the city, the number one most important thing is they feel that they understood how to get around. Because the thing that frustrates people and ruins the experience is the feeling of, I'm in this amazing global city, there's so much to do, but I just can't navigate, I can't work out what's where, I don't know how to get there, there's too much choice, I don't know what to do. And transport's a really important part of that story. So for us, the experience of using transport and how transport makes the city make sense is a really important part of that experience of the city.
Great. Just be given the 15-minute warning, so I'm going to finish with just one question to you all before opening up to everyone here. If there was one thing you could do to strengthen the link between sustainable transport and urban regeneration, what might that be? And what, what's the thing that could be addressed? And I'll give you a moment all to think about that, and then perhaps pick a victim.
Is money not allowed as an answer?
Money can definitely be allowed as an answer. Yeah. Do you want to expand on that?
Well, a lot of this is about investment.
Yeah.
Partly it's investment in running costs, and partly it's investment in expanding the network.
Yeah.
London public transport in London, so Transport for London has just had for the first time in a long time a 4-year settlement in the spending review, which is hugely welcome and very important, giving the stability to be able to invest in London's public transport and to maintain the public transport that we have. But we currently don't have funding for any of the extensions of the lines, which would unlock that housing and that growth that we talked about.
Excellent. Makes sense. Richard, go to you.
Yeah, kind of similar, but I don't think it's just money. So there's been a lot of positive noises in the various strategies that have come out recently out of the government about infrastructure and about energy and those kind of things. But the bulk of it's kind of general. It's kind of like, sounds nice, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. So I think some specifics, I would say, yes, we're going to back that now, get started.
Clear decisions.
And I think we all talked about it earlier, kind of like, whatever it is, we want it now.
Yeah, great. Peter, any other thought?
Yeah, sorry, do it all as quickly as you can. Actually get the Northern Pennite links going, get all of those connections going, because actually we are a tiny island and sometimes it is really quite difficult to get around it. So anything we can do to get us out of planes for travelling around this small island to actually come on true sustainable transport. That
Get on a Lumo train
to
Edinburgh. I'll just get
there
that
we go.
plug in. Yeah.
More of that. Just we need it. Lord Adonis said it 15 years ago. We need it all, and we need it all yesterday.
Yeah. Excellent. Andrea?
It's quite difficult to come in after both of those, but make it tangible. We talk about these things, we draft great strategies, doing it quickly, but actually, let's get that momentum going. We are pushing for sustainable transport. We know that those connectivities and that momentum is needed to drive growth, social inclusion, opportunities to more deprived areas. So it's stop writing it on a piece of paper and let's do it. Let's make it tangible, let's make it real. And I think that's absolutely key in this journey.
Something to add?
I think we're all kind of nearly saying the same thing. But I think perhaps just to emphasise is that we do know how to do it. It's all there. All of these projects are there. They're ready to go. We know how to do it. We know what needs doing. We just need somebody to press the button.
Money.
Graham, anything to all of the above, pretty much?
Well, yeah, what do I say now? He's perfectly answered it. But no, I think we need to see this as a system. We are an ecosystem. We need to really connect and come together. All the modes, all the people who enable this, all the people who are going to enable regeneration and connecting people through transport, all need to come together in forums to drive that change together. And it's really about multi-solving. It's about not just solving one problem, it's solving many. So how do we decarbonise that improves air quality, that improves social accessibility, that drives economic growth. So it's about putting all of these things together, not just driving outcome in one area, but driving them across many areas.
Excellent. Great, thanks very much. So, yes, any questions from the floor? I'm told we have a roving mic, I think. Is that right? Should we just hand one out? I don't think we do. Okay. There you go. Go for it. There you go.
Hi, that better?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So my name is Malini Bose, and I lead sustainable transport for KPMG. So really, obviously enjoyed that panel and agree with everything that was said. Just on the point of money, I'm curious about whether you've tried any sort of innovative funding or financing models to fund the initiatives that you've talked about. I'm asking in the context of models like land value capture that get talked about quite a bit. Can we do that to sort of fund housing, etc., as well as potentially the role of kind of road pricing and shifting to those types of models? So yeah, just curious to hear from the panel about what you've tried.
Were they doing the roving mics yesterday?
Initiative financing.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. There's a lot more work to do on it, and I think we've been waiting to see what was going to come out in the National Infrastructure Pipeline and the spending review to understand what is likely to be grant funded and therefore what needs to go to the market. London does have a history of using different types of financing models. So Crossrail, for example, was funded through levy, essentially through land value capture. But I think there's a lot of other things that we could be looking at. Having said that, Transport for London is one of the least subsidised public transport networks in any global city in the world, so it essentially operates on a commercial basis.
Anyone else want to come in on that?
I mean, it's specific to the Freeport, but that we get incentives from government, and part of that deal is that we get to keep some of the rates, more of the rates going forward. So there is the opportunity to borrow against that income. So use future rates income as a way of not funding everything, but kind of the gap, if you like.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Hello, thank you very much. So my name is Antje Held. I work for Stellantis Financial Services. We provide financing for vehicles. And so you already mentioned what role vehicles may play for bringing customers to the stations. I just wonder, how do you foresee the role of privately owned vehicles within city centers? So is there a role for privately owned vehicles? Will people still have cars, their own car in the future, in an inner city, living in an inner city or close to a city? Or, well, you said we want to get people out of cars. I understand that. But yeah, do you foresee a completely private car-free inner city?
I can comment on this. Given we run buses as well as trains, I think it's completely unrealistic to think that cars are just going to be removed in their entirety. That's just never going to happen. I think, and it's also good that the electrification of cars is happening as well, and that's happening at scale and at pace. So I don't think we can assume that cars aren't going to play a role in the future. For sure they are. I think what we experience at first, certainly in our bus division, is the impact that simple measures could have in city centres that favour buses. So, for example, bus lanes, or even just making the shelters a bit more appealing in partnership with local authorities, just to make the experience of using the bus better. That in itself might make people consider taking 1 or 2 journeys a month by bus, to the shops or whatever, versus using the car, and the impacts of that in terms of decarbonisation and also alleviating congestion, improving air quality is massive. So our perspective on it is that car use is always going to be there. At least this is the first group use. Car use is always going to be there, but what can be done to kind of nudge people to make those decisions about perhaps marginal journeys once or twice a week or once or twice a month that they might ordinarily take in a car and use public transport for, that alone will have a huge impact if that can be shifted, I'd say.
The future is unknown, but I think actually, we're looking at carpooling on the site, electric carpooling, because we know that within the communities around us, we need to be able to get those last mile journeys going around. They're going to be all electric. We're looking at other all electric modes of kind of combined bikes, all that kind of stuff as well. And I do think, oddly, even at King's Cross, nearly just over a decade ago, we were looking at trialling AV on the estate because it was not on public roads, of trying to trial AV to get people around for the smaller intercity journeys. Milton Keynes has been doing it for a while in and around there, and I think there will be that smaller urban transportation mode. I think there will be a big market for it actually going forward. I think it's a fantastic opportunity personally, and we haven't even talked about electric helicopters and people carrying drones, all that kind of stuff. So the tops of buildings are going to need to change as well, I think, in the future going forward. Just maybe that's just kind of futurist.
So, sorry, and if I'm allowed an after question then. If you say, well, which is great news, how then are you foreseeing the development of the EV charging grid? And maybe that's a question for Laura. Is that part of the transport development as well?
Yeah, EV charging is a critical bit of infrastructure. It's rolling out at pace in London, but it could always be rolled out much faster. There's 2 keys to this. One is the new London plan, which is the statutory spatial development plan for London, and the new one's currently being written. The consultation just closed on it. But the other is upgrading our electricity grid. So really the binding constraint in London on rolling out electric vehicle charging is being able to get power into the places that it needs to be.
Can I just jump in on that as well? Because we're talking about cars there. If we just extend that to trucks and buses, that could equally be hydrogen. And one of the challenges with the EV charging is getting the power to the points where you charge them. With hydrogens, it's essentially like refueling your diesel car, except clearly there's no emissions whatsoever. So just an angle.
Yeah, and I'll just come in that briefly as well to say that in First we are transforming many of our depots to put in fast EV chargers to obviously support our electric buses that we're shifting over to. And there's opportunities around charging as well, rather than just being a challenge. So we have 10 substantially electrified and 3 fully electrified depots outside of London now. And during the night, the buses come in and are charged and sit there. Our assets are being used for that purpose. But then during the daytime, they're sat there not being used, and therefore we see an opportunity there that we're starting to work through with organisations that have significant fleets of their own, so typically van fleets and so on, are coming into our sites, charging up, and then going out and making deliveries or what have you. So there's a lot. I'd say there's a lot going on in the EV charging space that isn't all. Some of it isn't kind of negative. Some of it's quite exciting, and certainly for us as a bus business, we're trying to see that as an opportunity. Like, how do we get our chargers to be used and have exploited to the max, and uptime as much as possible, basically. Any other questions? Yeah, I'll go. Yep, go for it.
Thank you. Hi there, I'm Vanessa. I'm a sustainability consultant from Temple. I guess there's been a lot of talk about rail investments catalysing growth. But I guess there's another question is, and it supports housing, and how much can we really keep developing and relying on our natural environment to support when actually we know that we're using more energy, to do those housing, to create housing, we use more concrete, all of those things, we're putting so much pressure on getting more infrastructure. Do we need it? Do we at some point need to say stop, and it's not sustainable anymore because we actually don't have enough space to support it, and we can't keep buying things in because it's then our supply chain's growing and having more of an impact on the kind of the global carbon emissions. And then secondly, I guess in part of that, are we not better at spending some of that money in upgrading our current infrastructure? Sorry to pick on Southeastern, but 67%, you only was reliable for 67% of your journeys last year. That means 33% weren't reliable. It's very expensive. That means people aren't picking up their children, and that is going to be, Andrew, I think you said it's about ease. The best thing you can do is make it cheap, make it reliable, and obviously accessible. But are we not better at maybe stopping some of that element of growth because it's not sustainable, and investing in what's currently there to make people use it more?
So Southeastern primarily runs on a Victoria network. Apart from the high speed, all of our network is of a Victorian age. So we basically sweated that asset for 200 years. We're celebrating 200 years of rail. If you go under London Bridge Station, on the very lowest concourses, you can see all the bridges, all the arches, and those arches go right the way down to Deptford and to Greenwich. So I guess we don't build the assets, we don't build the infrastructure, we run on them. But what I'm trying to say is that we make those assets last for a very long time. And the more people that travel with us, the smaller each carbon footprint is of that journey. I can't really comment more broadly than that, but I think it's about being really effective and maximising the use of our assets to reduce their individual footprint of each journey.
I think we need a bit of both. So, can you hear me? Yeah, I think we need a bit of both. So a bit of investment into what are those new infrastructure projects to allow for development and access to wider areas. And I'll talk about construction in a second. But that we also need that investment into upgrades because it is 200 years old. We can look at the existing network and go, well, I would have done that better, I would have done this better, I would have designed the tracks differently to make sure that they could stand higher temperatures or withstand massive flood events that we're seeing more and more frequently. So I think it's really important that we invest the money into upgrading existing infrastructure as well. So I do think they go hand in hand. We don't have a whole panel on this, but I could talk about construction all day and about how we actually build it. And I'm really passionate about concrete, steel, and fuel. We've touched on some of the different fuels already, but how we build is as important as what we're building. Where are we getting those materials from? How are they getting to site? What fuels are we using to do that? as well as, how inclusive are we? So I do think there is a point, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head there, a point of what can our natural environment withstand, and how do we ensure that we keep that natural environment and investment in the natural environment alive. And I do think it's a bit of a balancing act. Are we good at it? Probably could do better. We definitely did the investment in both existing, both new, and making sure we tread that line finally, because it's really, really important. But yeah, concrete, steel, fuel is definitely my bag. I'll happily talk about it all day. Some really exciting things happening in the space. Thanks, it's a great question.
It is a great question. I'll be very quick. Housing need in London is critical, and developing around transport nodes is the most sensible thing to do, where you go high density, but you need to make sure that you do protect the natural resources as much as possible, and that's what we're trying to do at Earls Court. Of the 44 acres, over 20 is publicly accessible land. Our BNG is going to be over 85%. We're hitting our urban greening factor. I am putting a demonstrator on site which is showing how we can construct commercial and resi using very low embodied carbon, local stone and mass timber. I could talk about it for hours. Happy to speak to you afterwards about it, but we're very, very conscious of that. In a post-COVID environment, access to nature, and given all of the development that we're talking about, is absolutely fundamental. It's a right, and we need to make sure that we deliver it, and that's what we're aiming to do.
Just a quick one as well, just to add in on everybody's answer. It was a really good question, and it's multifaceted, isn't it? I want to talk about energy again. We've kind of got that, but I think a big part of it's carbon capture. So carbon capture gives you the opportunity to decarbonise your concrete, frankly. But it needs a bit of money from the government. It needs the government. So let's crack on with it.
I think we've very quickly got time for just one more question, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. I'm being getting lots of hand gestures at the back, so I'll just last quick question, if that's okay.
Sure, thanks. So we did already talk about, where it's being subsidized, like where transport's being subsidized, and making it cheap, making it accessible. And I feel like that's a part of it. You can be where everybody is, but if they can't afford to utilize it, then it's not really useful. So, for example, I work in events, I need to do a site visit up in Edinburgh. I can spend £150 to £200 to take the train, or I can spend 60 quid and take a flight. I know which one my company's going to pay for. So where do we see, solutions around that and making it more financially viable for people to access and use?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, and the pricing of rail travel is kind of an industry thing, to be honest, and is set as much by government as us as operators, and it does need to be looked at, and I think it will be looked at in the reforms that are coming up with Great British Rail. Ticketing is certainly a priority, I believe, and not just the level of it, but the complexity of it is as I understand it, something that's fundamental to the reform going on in rail at the moment. So I would say watch this space, but at first what we certainly do is do our best to kind of introduce kind of offers and deals and things like that, and as I mentioned at the start of the session, with Lumo, our model there was to create an entirely new service where it's run almost as this kind of budget airline where there's one class of travel, and the service is a bit more no frills, shall we say, so that we can charge a lower price. So I think there's change happening there, but I think there's plenty of work to do as well on ticketing and pricing of rail tickets for sure. Anyone else want to say anything on that?
Yeah, just to support your open access plea. The open access rail is part of it. So I came down on Hull trains today, and it's really good, I've got to say. It still would have been cheaper to drive, but it is really good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, right. That is. I'm officially getting a time out now. So, thanks everyone for coming and listening. It's been a pleasure to sit with you this morning, and just thanks to the panel as well. Thanks for coming over. Thanks.